Deirdre, that is a major part of this software upgrade that introduces a lot of new features to the Bitcoin network, including better privacy and security for users.
And gold's 10 trillion and Bitcoin is 1 trillion. And it's pretty clear that Bitcoin is winning, gold is losing.
And again, I don't expect these to be perfect, but they're contextualizing network adoption, which is, I think, everything in this space for the time being, until we start moving into some of the other things. See, this whole show, Raoul's Adventures in Crypto, is basically my learning journey. I am learning along with everybody else, and I'm taking everybody with me. There are no answers here. This is not like the macro world where you kind of know how things work and it's deciding which way it's going to go. Is it this path or that path? This is like, it's an unknown future, and we all have to figure it out while sprinting a marathon. So it's immensely hard work. There's incredible amounts of input of new information coming that it's overwhelming us all. So what I'm trying to do is build this framework in my head that allows me to take into account all the things that are happening without having to be an expert on all of them. And I want to be an expert on some of them. So that's how I'm approaching it. It's impossible to be an expert on everything, and anybody who tries will just die of overwork. What am I looking at? Let's start first with, I've explained to everybody now that this is the fastest adoption of any technology in all recorded history. So the chart you can see on the screen now shows that the internet, back in 1997, when it had 150 million users, was growing at 63% a year. 150 million users in crypto is present day, and it's growing at 113% a year. So this is why it's so hard for us all to catch up, because it's growing at a ridiculous pace, and it's only accelerating. I mean, we've seen in the last year alone the rise of DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, central bank digital currencies, stable coins, in a way that none of us could have expected. It's just happened so fast, at such scale, and that's only going to continue. And that's a core philosophy of the exponential age. How I look at this, to frame it simply, is this is currently a $2.5 trillion asset class. If you compare the other asset classes, they're between 150 and 300 trillion until you get to derivatives, which are 1 quadrillion. And then when you get to FX, it's multiple quadrillions. The reality is, if we continue this rate of adoption, we should get to an equivalent size asset class in these digital assets. And that would make them worth 200 trillion. We have never in all of human history been given an opportunity that an entire asset class, not a stock, not a single token, an entire asset class goes up 100x in value, probably by the end of this decade. So, as I've talked about before, this is, I think, the largest distribution of wealth and fastest distribution of wealth in all recorded history. Because unlike most other wealth distributions, things like railroads, phones, even computers, and even the internet, they accrue to giant companies. This is accruing to tokens which anybody can participate in, because you can own a fraction of a token. So Bitcoin as of today is 60-something thousand. By the time this interview comes out, my guess is going to be a bit higher. I was driven on a mission after 2008 and 2012, the European crisis, to tell people about the risks and opportunities. I didn't want somebody to come to me and said, why didn't I know? My job, the whole job of Real Vision, is to make sure everybody knows. I have been following Metcalfe's law as my guide for this. Metcalfe's law is about how do you value a network? And it's about basically the number of people on the network plus the number of connections between those people. And the more connections and the more applications built on top of those people, the more valuable it is. So the biggest network is currently Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has less applications built on it than Ethereum does, but it has more users. So it's immensely valuable. It has the store of value proposition that most people are familiar with. Adoption effects seem to repeat themselves. It seems to be a human behavioral thing. So if you look at this next chart, Bitcoin now is basically exactly following Bitcoin 2013 in price structure. It's weird. And this is not a chart I've just pulled up today. I've been following this for a year and a half once I first started discovering Metcalfe's law. And I'm like, bloody hell, this is weird. And what I'm expecting is a gigantic rally into year end. And we'll talk a bit about an extended cycle in a sec. Yeah, and if you remember, 2013 was a hell of an adoption cycle. It was the initial one, and it had some violent moves. It's kind of suggesting violent moves. You know, just by using that chart, it gets me somewhere like 300,000 Bitcoin. I don't see any reason why the chart's not going to work. And we'll come a bit more about how this cycle plays out in a sec. But the other killer chart is once I start discovering Metcalfe's law, I start realizing that Ethereum's exactly following Bitcoin's last cycle. And it's like, oh my God, this is spooky. I mean, I've got it actually on my Bloomberg in real time, and it almost works. Tick for tick. I've never seen anything like it. And that gives a cycle projection for Ethereum of 20,000. I thought, well, if my logic about Metcalfe's law is right, then these layer ones that we'll talk about later should also fit. And bizarrely, here's the chart of Solana against Ethereum in the last cycle. When Ethereum was the darling, the new breakthrough, it's exactly following. And the same is true of Terra. It's exactly following. It's like, wow. So as these different protocols get adoption, they're all behaving in the same way, while Bitcoin is repeating its early cycle of massive adoption. So for me, this is super interesting. And again, I don't expect these to be perfect, but they're contextualizing network adoption, which is, I think, everything in this space. How do I think this plays out? Because that's what everybody cares about. I honestly think we're going to have a ridiculous year end. Is we've got different people, actors in the business now. So if you are BlackRock or you are Tudor and you have Bitcoin at end of year, if you are BlackRock, and let's say I'm right and Bitcoin goes up 4x into the end of the year or 3x, you are going to rebalance and sell some Bitcoin. If you are Tudor, you come into the end of the year, you want to lock in your gains because you get paid your annual performance fee in January, so you will probably flatten out your P&L. So what happens is we might see selling towards the end of December. The market is going to go, the cycle's finished, because everybody's kind of expecting a December end, because it was 2013 and 2017 where the Bitcoin cycle ended in December. However, I think the structure has changed.